live training. So this is all about how to use leverage and good debt to build a portfolio. By far, this is probably the only way, or the most quickest way you're going to be able to build a large portfolio, or even if it's not large, it's the way you're going to be able to build a portfolio. So really important to understand leverage, really important to understand good debt and bad debt. There's a massive difference between them, but also it's very important to understand deleverage, when to deleverage and not to over leverage, and what stages you are in your journey, whether you should be leveraging or deleveraging or being a bit more aggressive. So we'll touch all this on this training today. Hope you can hear me okay. Morning everybody. Leverage, I think it's Archimedes said, if you get a leverage big enough, you could move the world, you know, and leverage is such a powerful tool when you're moving forward. But as I said, you really have to pay close attention of when to deleverage and not to over leverage. And there's loads of variables. There's no one sort of path for this. So what I'm going to do on this training is discuss, like, show you the different options so you can sort of like mix and match the different points out where you are in your journey. So there's loads of dependables on this, with your age, where you are in your journey, your appetite to risk. There's loads of different things that you've got to add around thinking on how you approach this, not just straightforward, should I leverage, should I not leverage, when to deleverage and when not to deleverage. So hope you find that hope today you're going to find this useful. Fantastic, and I'll get started on this training. So important to understand leverage in a property business. So what is leverage, what is good debt, what is bad debt? There's a massive difference between the two. A book I'm going to probably recommend you all read if you've not read it already. I'm guessing quite a few people have. This is the kind of the Bible of self-finance and self-made finance, is Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a top-selling self-finance book in the world, and it just really shows you the fundamentals behind the mindset behind it firstly, and it really nails down the difference between good debt and bad debt. You always get the conversation around this, and people that don't financially educate themselves do not necessarily understand this. Good debt is really important element of growing businesses. You get the odd unicorn business that just grows organically from the earnings they're making, leverage back in, but the majority of businesses are all built off of debt. So understanding how to leverage and use debt well, but not over leverage, as we keep on saying, is a vital part of building wealth. So you really need to understand that. As I said, you'll get the odd unicorn business, it's just builds off of their earnings, but they're unicorns. They're few and far between. They're the exception, not the rule. So if you can let me know if my head's cut off, I'll start getting on the whiteboard and drawing these. As I said, thanks Paul Tinker for jumping on that call the other day with me, but I do like the visual here for this style training, but I'm definitely adopting that for the actual coaching stuff. Yes, can see you. So thanks Steve for being my eyes and my ears this morning. Let's get started. So leverage, as I said, is absolutely critical in building a portfolio. But what you've got to understand is the difference between good debt and bad debt. So everybody sort of kind of thinks debt is just debt, but the massive difference between this, as I said, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but the massive difference between these two, let's move that down a little bit. The massive difference between these two are good debt is buy-to-let mortgages, for example, or business loans. So how you work out if this is a good debt or bad debt is basically good debts put money in your pocket. And this is where you will become wealthy. There's a big difference between being a high earner and a wealthy person. And the big difference between that is wealthy people can stop work and they earn money from their good debts and their assets. So really good debts are buy-to-let mortgages and cash flowing assets. So when I say cash flowing assets, what I mean by that is you buy a property, a buy-to-let property, and it cash flows a monthly income. You buy gold, it don't cash flow you any money. It is an asset, but it don't cash flow you. This is why your own home don't come into this good debt section. There's an argument with this, and Shane had a really good argument. If you own your own home long enough and it went up in capital appreciation, and you then leverage, you loan some money against that and use that for buy-to-lets, it would then become an asset. But it wouldn't be an asset until that point. So bad debt is bad debt is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So, as I said, in Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was very, very controversial because he was saying your house is a bad debt. So car loans are bad debt. Credit cards and personal loans. Sorry for any grammar police on this today. I'm a little bit dyslexic, so mind the spelling. This is just for example of just giving you just a little visual with this. I'll take a screenshot. I know it's a bit far away. I'll take a screenshot of this, put it in the notes afterwards. But bad debt is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So any cost, any expenses. So this is what I said, the difference between super wealthy people is they buy assets that give them a residual income, so they don't have to swap their time for money. This is what keeps you in the rat race, bad debt. So when you get your house loans and your car loans and your credit card loans, you then have to keep on going to work, and you're on that hamster wheel, you know. You have to just continuously go to work to keep on servicing these debts. So this you get on this hamster wheel and you're down here, sorry for the really basic drawing, but you constantly run on this hamster wheel, keeping this going to service all of these debts. If you stop working, and this is where you're swapping your time for money, and by the way, the biggest asset you've got and the most expensive thing you'll spend is time. If you stop swapping your time for money, this don't get serviced, and this is why you're in a trap. So you've got to constantly be in the hamster wheel. This is what happens often with this as well, is people leave school, they get, not many people know at 16, 17 what they want to do, but they pick a job, like it sounds cool, or that pays well, or that seems alright, or my friends are doing. You just get into a job, or your parents force you into a job, they want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. Then you get to about 30 and you've got loads of house debts, and the better the job, the bigger these debts, bad debts you get offered, and the bigger you get sucked into that cycle of this, the harder this hamster wheel is, and this rat race is harder to get out of. And this is exactly what the rat race is. This is what gets accumulated. So you really got to know the difference between bad debt and good debt. Super wealthy people buy assets to pay them, and they buy their time back. So whether they work or don't work, they're buying their time back. So that's the biggest difference. This is why you see I'll put time twice there. This is why you see some footballers, or Mike Tyson, people earn lots and lots of money, go broke because they didn't buy assets. They earned lots of money, but they spent lots of money, and that's it, they go broke. That's why you see so many these hot sports stars at the end of their career, because they don't understand this good debt method. And in their career, they're buying big houses, big cars, and that sucks up all the maintenance and all that from this stuff, sucks up all their money because they've not got the assets to replenish it. And then as they get to retirement age and they can't earn money from like boxing anymore, in Mike Tyson's case, or playing football, that's when they get into a massive amounts of trouble. So now we've identified the difference between good debt and bad debt, let's think a little bit about leverage. So using good debt is all about using leverage. So what do we mean by using leverage? So typically buy-to-let mortgages, the best asset class out there, in my opinion, not just because I'm in property, is buy-to-let properties. If you've got a business loan, they might loan you 50% of your business venture, and they want you to put in 50%. If you've got some stocks, I don't even think they'd lend you 50% if you went to the bank. Even if you said, look, I've got the inside track on Apple's new glasses, or whatever, the new thing they're coming out, and Apple's $1 trillion company, this is going to push their stock through the roof. Can you lend me some money to play on the stock market? Unless you're Warren Buffett, I very much doubt the banks will say to you, yes, I'll lend you money. You can go into the bank as a buy-to-let investor, first time, never have any experience, and you can tell them, I've never had any experience. You can go into there, as long as you meet certain criteria, which is not a really high criteria, and you can say to them, right, okay, I want a buy-to-let mortgage. I want a buy-to-let mortgage, and and I've got £25,000, and I found £100,000 property. Will you lend me £75,000? Would you put 75% in if I put 25% in? And the banks will say yes. They even put up to 85% in. So what this means is, for every £25 you will put in, this is you, the bank will put in £75 to £85 to fund these deals. That's phenomenal. That is leverage. So what you have to think about, if this one house down here cost 100k to purchase, if this one house is costing you 100k, then you could buy one house for 100k, use up your cash, and maybe have £500 per month income, for example. Or you can use that £25, you could use this 75% loan to value, so this same 100k, you could actually, and this is one house, let's try and draw this in, mind the drawing as well guys, just a little what's the name, so you can have one house, or you could buy with leverage and lending 75% from the banks 4 houses and get yourself an income of 2k a month. So even with the mortgages might be, on these sort of style properties, the mortgages might be might be £800 a month, so you're getting £1,200 a month return as opposed to the £500 when you buy without leverage. So you can see the power in this. But then when you add leverage also to the BRR strategy, which is buy refurb remortgage. My red pen is running out of juice. Let's see if I can find one over here. When you add this to the buy refurb remortgage strategy, so this basically means you buy a property, you refurbish it, and you remortgage it, you force up the appreciation, so you add the value up. So for example, you buy a house, you buy your first house for 70k, and this is quickly all easy maths for you guys. You then spend 10k on the refurb. You spend 10k on the refurb, and then this house is now worth 100k. You can then use leverage again and refinance out 75k of your money, so you might only have 5k left in that deal. This is how you compound, grow and build vast amounts of assets using forced appreciation, adding value to things, and using leverage to do this. So it's a fantastic, every really wealthy, the odd unicorn, and as I said, they're the exceptions, not the rule, have built their wealth using this model in whatever form of business. So whether you use it in business and you loan and you build up the assets and you can keep on loaning against it. Richard Branson, even that's how he saved, I'm not sure how far they're into it, but how he initially saved Virgin Airlines was he had the assets within the Galactica and these space missions. He made more value into that company, loaned against that to save his other company. So this gets done in all models, but buy to let is my favoured method of doing that. I am building businesses as assets, but it's beyond the scope of this conversation. So now what you want to be thinking about is you've got your good debt, your bad debt. You're thinking about leverage to grow that. You understand the difference between these two. So using leverage is fantastic, but you've got to know when to not over leverage and when to deleverage, and when to know to be a bit more aggressively and not aggressively. So let's try and think this on the terms of this. There is 3 major factors that you've got to be thinking about when you're approaching how to leverage and when to deleverage. So first of all, it is your age, how old you are. Secondly, it is your risk profile, so how willing you are to risk. That can massively be linked to your age. And then the last one is your end goal. So what is your end goal? So what do we mean by all of these different parts of this puzzle? So end goal, if your end goal is to pay off your properties and sell them and live off the money, it's very different from if your end goal was to build a legacy to pass on to your kids. If you're building a legacy and you've done it through trust and done it correctly, you could pass it on to the kids with debt, and if it's done correctly, and the debt is actually quite beneficial to it, and especially if you want to keep on growing, the debt is very beneficial. But if you said, if you just want to retire, say you didn't have any kids and you said I just want to pay these down, sell them and retire and get on a yacht and go around the world, it's very, very different. So again, your age will have a massive factor in this. The younger you are, generally, the more aggressive you should be really thinking to be, and the more higher your risk profile should be. And as you get older and you get more dependence and more to lose, your risk profile slightly changes, but you've always got a risk. You can't grow without risk, but you've got to make sure you get calculated and mitigated risks, so you understand the calculation of these risks. So once you know where you are in these brackets, you've got to think about how and when to deleverage. So as I said, when you're young, you want to leverage up as maximum as you can, and then as you start getting to a certain size of portfolio. So no matter what your age is, once you get to a certain size of portfolio, and also you get to a certain age maybe, and you've got kids and different risk factors, you then start a deleveraging cycle. So I'm just going to show you everybody at the front end of your journey. This is just a general journey, so everybody's end goals are different, so you've got to readjust this to whatever your end goal is. But as a generalised rule, if you want to build lasting wealth, and say you want to build this position here where you've got good debt and you're not swapping you bought your time back and you're not swapping time for money and you want to get out of this rat race, the first thing you should be doing is using leverage to create cash flow. So at the front end of your journey, you want to think about leveraging up as much as possible, because again, you've not got major exposure around you. There's different cycles, different economic cycles you have to think about, where the banks are in the economic cycle, because banks will lend differently with their profiles. They go through different cycles with the economy, and they've got different risk appetites in different times with different style people. But as a general rule, at the front end, think about creating cash flow. So to create cash flow, you want to leverage a lot more. So you want to leverage more, you want to recycle as much money out, and you want to create as much cash flow as possible. Once you've created cash flow and you get to a certain scale size, you then think about your deleveraging plan. And this is for two reasons. One, so you're not overexposed in case there is any rumbles, and the markets are cyclical, they go up and down. So when you're in business, there will be points where you've got to ride out market conditions, and deleveraging when you start getting larger is very important. But it's also very important for how the banks look at you. If you're over leveraged as a bank, they will just stop lending to you. So you need to start deleveraging. But there is a general plan through this, and I said again, once you get once you get to your end goal, or once you considering your end goal, there's different time points and different methods with this deleveraging what links into your end goal, so that you have to think slightly differently. So what you need to know is what your why is. What you need to know is try and map this out, try and plan this out. You can't plan out years and years ahead accurately, but if you know what your end goal is, you can slowly reverse engineer that into what you need to do. So again, here's a quick little sort of example of what you could be doing as a general rule. So say you're a fairly youngish age and you're just starting up, or you're just starting up in general. So depending on your age and what you want to achieve. So if you're a little bit older, you might say, I want to get 10 properties, or depending where you are in this rat race as well, to replace your income and get enough income for your living costs, you might need more properties than others. But let's just give a simple, you will know, work out what property, the style properties you want to buy, work out, you might buy HMOs, you might only need 4 or 5 of them, or 10, less, but let's just basically, on a basic buy to let, let's just say your income on each property was 250 and you wanted 2.5k a month to replace your income and get yourself out in a rat race. You'd say like 10, let's do this in a different colour down here, so you want 10 to 20 properties, I would say, before you start thinking about the deleveraging. And you want to leverage these at around 75% loan to value, maybe the odd one at 80% loan to value, the first ones, but that's where you want to be for your first 10 to 20, depending on your risk profile and depending on your age, will depend how many, and depending on your goals of how many properties you want. This number will differ. This might be slightly different, and depending on your strategy. But this is a generalisation, as I said. So once you've got to 10 to 20 properties, you've leveraged it, you've leveraged them hard. You want interest-only mortgages with these ones. So you want all of these on an interest-only. All on an interest-only mortgage, so it's creating more cash flow. So then, once you've got cash flow, once you're out of that rat race, what you want to be thinking about is starting your deleveraging plan. So as I said, this will be different for different people depending where they are in their property journey. But for example, if you chose the 10 properties, this is going to be like 10. Like when you get to about 10, from 10 to 20, or 20 to your next 30 properties, you want a nice way to start deleveraging is do the one-on-one sort of strategy. So you buy you buy one property with a 70% loan to value. So you put a bigger deposit down on that. So one property is 70%, and you don't re-leverage that property. You don't re-loan against you. No BRR on this one. And then you buy the second property. So this is property 11. This is property 12. So the second one, you would then buy at your normal BRR, 75%, and you would BRR this one. So you're still growing and building pot up, but as you're getting more income, that income can then go towards deposits. And as you're slowly building up the deposits more and you're compounding that, you would slowly do these less. So you might do these one-on-one like this. You don't refinance this one, and then you refinance this one. Still on interest only, but then as you get to about 30 properties, or maybe even 25, but as you get to about 30 properties, start thinking about repayments. Some repayment mortgages. So you might do one-on-one on repayment mortgages, or these ones here that you're not re-leveraging, you start putting them on repayment plans. The aim to what you want to do is at the front end, you want to get your leverage around 75%. You've got time on your hands. You've got, as long as you get the good cash flowing assets that can like survive different fluctuations, to be on this video, you're creating cash flow. Then you want to start deleveraging. The aim at this stage here is to be at around, at a total, at around sort of 50 to 60% loan to value on your overall portfolio. Because don't forget, these first ones, you're still going to have a higher loan to value. Hopefully you might experience a bit of capital appreciation that starts chipping away at that. But then as you start doing this one, what you're putting a bigger deposits down, but also still do the refurb, so you force it. So what I got to about, how many properties did I get to? I think I was about between 15 and 20 when I started doing this plan. So I'd buy one, I would add some value to it by doing the work to it, put 30% down, but I wouldn't refinance it. So, for example, I bought one for I think it was about 56 or 57. I put 30% down. I'd done it on a repayment as well, so I only had around 40k's worth of lending, but then I forced the depreciation up to about 75, 80k. So I had a bigger, so this is reducing my overall portfolio down. But also, I'm starting to put them on repayments. So it's forcing it down that way. It's also, you're forcing your overall loan to value down. So you start the deleveraging plan. And then, depending what your end goal is, so think about what your end goal is. So there's a few different end goals when you get into property. As I said, your end goal might be legacy, to leave it to your kids. So if it was legacy, I would suggest leave it at around the 50% to 60% LTV. And again, and it might be legacy and growth, and you want it's growing, you want it to continue to grow, so leave it to that. So as I said, as the markets grow, as your prices go down, you just keep on continuously like loan against this and keeping it around this barrier. Depending on what your assets are, depending on how protected the assets are, make sure there's no recalling plans, or if they go into negative, beyond the scope of this one. But if they go underwater into negative equity, you want to make sure you've got strong cash flowing assets that even if they went on a variable, they can still earn you money. This is why I love these style houses in the north, because they still do that. Then, so if you want the legacy stuff, you'd be thinking about just keeping it around there and keeping with this rough plan. But then let's say you want to retire. And sell everything up. Your plan was to sell. As you got to a certain age point, so you have to think about your age. As you get to an age point, maybe you get to around, you've got to figure this backwards. How many years, what's your retirement age? Do you want to retire at 65, or do you want to retire at 70? Then work it backwards. You've got to get your payment plan. You might, if you start at 20, and then by the time you get to 40, you then trigger your payment plans on everything. You start shifting them all onto payment plans. Because ultimately, if you've grown well enough, even on a repayment model, you're still going to have cash flow, because you've built at this stage into cash flow. You carried on building, then you started deleveraging. So at this point, if you want to sell at the end of your thing, you would be thinking about that. Let's say you want to retire at 70 and you want to put them all on repayments over a 20-year. You start thinking about that at the age of 50. If that makes sense. But you reverse engineer this. You might put it over 25 years and think about that at the age of 45. So it's all dependable. There's so many variables in here. Your end goal, your appetite to risk, your age, your rat race, where you are in the rat race, how much you need to replace on income to get yourself into this point where you've bought your time back. There's so many variables, but if you understand these parts of the variables, work out your end goals, and then click these bits into the puzzle, because depending on what you want to do, your ability, your risk, your age, then you can start reverse engineering it and working backwards to work your plan out. And remember, planning is such an important part and element of this. That's how I didn't think of this earlier on. I do 90-day plans, so a lot of this end goal stuff can be really in the air, thinking, how do I plan? Like, this is like 30, 40, maybe even 50 years in the future of my retirement stuff. How do I think and plan that? What you do is you look at your big picture stuff, you reverse engineer it, you then think, what can I do in this next year to get to my goals? It might be just buying 2 or 3 properties and getting started, understanding leverage. You might be educating yourself, buying some books, reading, getting going, networking. So you break that down, what you can do in the next year. You then break it down into 90 days increments of what you can do, because then in 90 days you can really see. Beyond 90 days you can't really see far enough ahead. And that said, and this is not a funnel that leads to any sales or anything. This is a straightforward 90-day plan. I've got a 90-day planner that you're more than welcome to have. If anybody wants our 90-day planner template that helps you plan out this stuff, put in the comments 90-day planner, and I'll give you that template. It is in exchange for your email, by the way, so there is one trade-off. But it's just a free little resource. Didn't think of that, but it could be helpful. You might be thinking to yourself, how do I start planning this out? Plan it out in 90-day increments. Think of your big picture, end goal. Think of the year, what you can do to create that, and then in the next 90 days. So if your goal was to buy 3 or 4 properties over the years, in the 90 days, what have you got to do? Phone agents, get on social media, and you can plot these bits in week by week and plan this out. Having plans will, it's like trying to get to Liverpool. If I try to drive to here to Liverpool, I think, okay, maybe drive up the A1 and drive towards north. My directions are terrible, by the way. Some people might tell me, no, don't go that way. But, for example, I could probably drive there and find my way looking at road signs and eventually get there. But if I used a map, a plan, or even a TomTom or a sat-nav, I would get there a hell of a lot quicker, and this is what the importance is of planning. But understanding this and understanding your plan out this is very important, because if you are over leveraged, by the way, this can really cause. Let's say, for instance, I see somebody over leveraged. Look at my interview with Gavin. It's in this group. Gavin J O'Gallagher. He was leveraged in a dangerous point of the market with dangerous way of leverage, so he had security against other assets or good assets that put him under, and that put him backwards. As I said, you've got to think about the banks and their appetite to you as you get over leveraged. Let's say the market has a big correction and it drops down. I know a lady that in the northeast, she really leveraged up on her portfolio, so she started buying houses maybe 30 years ago and leveraged up on them when the markets grew crazily, and most of these properties are still underwater and not climbed out of that negative equity stage. She's at retirement age now, so she's stuck on a fix with the Mortgage Express and these companies that are aggressively lending. She's stuck on loans with them. She can't refinance out of it because the loan to value don't match with any other lenders. She can't sell them because there's more debt on it than she can sell it for. So this is why you've got to think about your deleveraging plan. You never know what's around the corner. Nobody from 2003 up to probably 2005 and 2006 really realised that there was going to be such a big decompression in certain parts of the country. So you've always got to think about this deleveraging plan. Also, back then, the banks didn't think of that so much. They won't let you get that leverage anymore. They will just stop lending to you. So really, really important to understand this. I'm going to be switched off from this. If any more questions later on, let us know. I'll put in the comments that 90-day planner for you, the template for that. I'll also put in the comments Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you've not read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you're thinking about getting into business and property, then get out and read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It just gives you the fundamentals between good debt, bad debt, and leverage. And it's such a powerful book. It's written a long time ago, I think the late 1980s, but the fundamentals behind it are still exactly the same today. Another really powerful one to understand this is Richest Man in Babylon. Yeah, really powerful book. Them 2 books will give you a basis understanding. This book is based around 5,000 years ago, and the principles in Babylon 5,000 years ago, or however many years ago that was, are still the same principles behind wealth today. Wealth is like the law of aviation or the law of aerodynamics. There's just fundamental laws behind it. And the fundamental laws behind it: save 10% of what you earn, put them into cash flowing assets that keep on paying you, make your money work for you. And if you do that continuously and compound that, you will end up retiring wealthy. So really hope you found that useful today. Remember, if you don't evolve your ideas, you're never going to live on your own terms. So evolve your ideas, live on your own terms, and have a great day, everyone.